Well, hello everyone. Today's episode is answering a question. Sometimes people say, how many times does it take to patch over a sheetrock cut? And the general answer for me is most of the time 3. I'm not an expert at it. I don't always get hyper about getting everything perfect. I want to let it look good. I know I have some stuff that I'm looking around the house that I didn't fix that was done when the contractors built the house is far less than perfect than my patches. I recently had a fix in where I had to move a drain from top to bottom in the where it's going to be the kitchen, and the back side of it is in the tank room where the reverse osmosis is. Did it in 2, pretty nice and flat, worked out really well, had a good wet mix, did real well, looked perfect, felt fine. But after I got it painted and I was down there doing that next project, I had some tiny little air bubbles where the mix, the quickset, was a little bit too soupy. Okay, so that's a little bit of my fault. It's not bad. It's in between 2 of the tanks, whatever. If I was really hyperactive about it, I could just go back in with some real thin mud, fill those little holes, just like we would a pinhole in a wall or a little bit bigger one. You know, we can sometimes do those in 1 shot. Sometimes we have to do 2 shots. Hit it back again with a little bit of the sponge, paint over, and it'd be perfect. Maybe for another time I need to paint that room anyway. So we have a little bit of a backstory to this when we show you the repair, and that's what we'll get to next. Well, now that I got the intros done, let me tell you what happened. We had some connector failure of some sort in where the refrigerator will go in the upstairs kitchen. Now, I don't know why it chose itself to leak, but most houses, I think, have a bigger risk of damage due to water damage than they actually do termites, at least in our area. Water will eat your house and ruin it. And if you have even the slightest, tiniest leak, fix that bugger right away. Don't wait till next weekend or put a pan under it, try to hide it. You'll forget it needs to be done. In this case, the refrigerator box that goes into the wall had been installed. It had its pipe connected. It was air pressure tested. It had water on it for probably close to a year, and it went through the great 5 degrees below zero December freeze of last year. And I thought, surely if anything failed in that process, it will be in that portion of the house, and it wasn't. Where the little stub up, the little male threaded stub up comes out of the refrigerator box is, of course, hidden behind sheetrock. And we have a connector like this, something like this in there. Actually, it's more like this one on this end. Now, I don't know if I can hold this up to the camera, but there's 2 distinct differences between these 2 types of connectors. And if I hold it up there just right, do you see that little bit of black in there? Well, that's a rubber washer. On the stainless version, if I hold it up there and I twist it just right, if I can get the light in there, it's actually tapered up at the top at about 45 degrees. They're very different connectors. Now, most of the things in my house, even the brass faucets in the bathrooms, the tub shower faucets, and all the valves, they're all connected with a connector like this. It has a rubber gasket in it. The important part about these little guys is they're designed so that when you screw that down on that male part, it homes out against that gasket. That's really what's sealing it, is the gasket. Now, sometimes the male parts that you're screwing into, the metal male part screwing into it, because they could also be plastic or copper or something else. Sometimes these little guys are a little fat, or perhaps the plastic is a little thin, and sometimes they don't want to always home out. So you don't have to, because they're designed to seal against that little washer. But sometimes, most of the time, I'll go ahead and put some Teflon tape or pipe dope on the threads just to make sure, and I'll tighten that bugger down tight. And sometimes, you know, when you get tight, how tight is tight? Well, sometimes you feel like it's tight enough that if it were any tighter, it might fracture and split somewhere down the road. Didn't happen in this case. I have no idea why it went a full year, but before I got the cabinets in and the refrigerator put in there, because I had some paying for it as a go type thing, it just started leaking. Why? I have no flipping idea, but she started leaking. So I had to open up the wall to fix it. And I did try the next time. We just have to cut the pipe out, because you see the refrigerator box, it doesn't twist. The one I have, it does not twist around. I don't get to adjust it like a union would, where I can twist both of them. So it's fixed, and then I have to put the female part on and get it as tight as I think it's going to get, solvent the pipe together, wait for the time to dry, which isn't that long, about an hour, I think, at room temperature, and then we put the water on it, see if she leaks. And doggone it, The next one leaked. I fiddled with this thing for about 4 hours trying to get some kind of a connection for whatever reason, and I started to suspect after having multiple female adapters that the brass, the coppery brass type of male part up top must not be perfectly round or something of that nature, because we ended up with 2 of these. I'm admitting, fail. I couldn't get them. The second one, it just a tiny little bit. If I waited long enough, wait hours overnight, sure enough, there'd be one little drop. And if you get one little drop in your wall, you need to have no drop in your wall. And this a tiny leak is not good. A tiny leak is as bad as a big leak. So I went to one of these stainless jobs because I can put the mojo on that puppy. And I think I put one on at 3 wraps, another one on at 5 wraps. Both of those suckers leaked. And when I put the next one of those on, now I'm just admitting as a non-professional plumber. I don't give up till I get it right, I think. But that second one, I got on there about as tight as I could possibly get it with some pipe dope on it, or Teflon seal if you like, and got her fixed. And plumbing is probably one of my least favorite household chores to do, right along with pulling wire. That's one of my least favorite things to do. Putting tile down, that's probably one of my least favorite things to do around the house. Painting is one of my least favorite things to do around the house. You have to keep up with the house, or you got to pay a contractor to do it. We have time, and we're doing this on a will as building type thing. It is fully permitted. There's nothing hinky going on with that, but there is a difference. This one, it happens to be, as you can see, if I hold it up there, you can see it has a stainless steel female portion. I'm not worried about breaking that off. This one being a little plastic, if it had a fit, I have them all over the house, on water heaters, on faucets, on valves. Not a problem. I think it's that refrigerator box I got. And now I know why it was about half the price of one of the competitors. It was going to give me a little bit of trip. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. Now, let's look at the sheetrock repair, because people do ask, I don't know, I don't do this a lot. How many times, how many layers does it take to get one right? And it just depends. It depends largely on the size of the piece you're cutting out. It depends on your specifics. Obviously, it's something that's smaller, you can usually patch it, plug the hole up, let it dry really good, and shrink down, then come back, sand it off, maybe do it just in 2. Maybe something smaller, a doorknob or something like that, you may get done in 2 shots. For me, to be honest with you, to get it kind of pretty, 3 shots pretty well much works. Where I've had to move some of the electric over a little bit for the cabinetry and change that drain around, I get them about 3. That seems to be pretty good. There may be a little bit of a high spot to it where I didn't feather it perfectly out, but it's going to be behind cabinets. Nobody's going to care. I just don't want to have that rat hole where somebody rips the wire out when they're putting the cabinets in, and you can't see them behind the cabinets, but there's still a big old rippy hole. I want to move it, got the time, paint it, patch it, paint it, and get it where it needs to be. So let's look at some pictures over here on the second panel. All right, what I have here, this little 2x4. This is, I don't know the professional term, but we for years have called this a scab. It's just a little 2x4 big enough to go in that hole, turn sideways. And the reason I went ahead and cut this hole this size, well, for one thing, I needed to dry out where it had been dripping. This is actually a little piece of tubing that I used to drain the pipe each time. I had to try to go back and try to get that little connection right there to quit acting up. But as it would drip, I would use that, just drain it into an old dishpan type thing. It's still hanging around in the picture. But in this case, I've got a stud here and a stud here. This piece of metal goes all the way across. If I were to try to get into this door right here, I'd have to pull the door to fix it to get to that stud, to patch it. So because the width of that door trim is actually coming over into that area. So there's not much you have there. Now you can try to do something with this, but it's not good just to try to patch that. So we just take a 2x4 and we put it in there, screw it down top and bottom, run one. I think we've got some screws going down this way. It's good and dry. You see a little extra piece here. That may actually even be the hole that goes in that piece. So that's stage 1. Here we are. We're all buttoned up, screwed and fit in there nice and tight. Got a little bit of a little piece where the skin came off. It was wet at that point right below here. And so we're going to patch it not with paper tape, which you could do, and they even make some, I think, some adhesive paper tape, and they make some that have a spine to it for corners like this in a roof. Let me get my hands right. All right, so it goes like that. If you've got a corner joint to make a nice thing, they make a type of tape special for that. But there we are. It's just screwed in there. It's nice and secure. I'm not getting much bump here, and when the cabinets go in, actually there'll be a little wall here. The little plywood wall will go right here, and a plywood wall here, so nobody's actually going to see this anyway, but I still want to make it as nice as my skill set will let me do. So this is getting ready to get real with it, as the kids say. So I've got me some paper down here. It's actually some Tyvek type material, some house wrap, and this type of tape. Now this is that adhesive patch tape that we use, because it's designed to be kind of like fiberglass in a boat. You can see through it. It's got holes in it, and if you were to have a big gap, and I don't really have any big gaps here, but if you had any big gap, it just helps hold it in there, get that wet mud in behind that kind of fiberglass looking tape, and that's in it, so it's ready to go at that stage. Next stage, I just come back with a base coat right over that tape, because the tape is a little bit thicker, I think, than the paper tapes. Feels like it. I always have a little bit of that wanting to show through, and it does come through at some point. So I just have it mudded in over the tape. That's the first, count them, that's number one. Here's number two. I'm trying to get it pretty close to perfect. I'm pretty sharp on this side where this line is. It's not feathered very well that way. It's feathered pretty good that way. It's a little shy on the top. Do you see that little bit of line? So it's a little bit small. The second round, which really should be a little bit bigger, it should be coming out here in a much bigger space, may have been able to finish it with two. So we sand that down, and yep, well, it's not quite perfect yet, because I can feel it. I'm a little sharp here, a little bit sharp here. I'm going to make it just a little bit wider. Come back with, what does this make it? Is that the third or the fourth round here? And we're cutting over the top pretty good. This is only because it was a little sharp of a fall on the feathering of that edge. There we go. We've got it all painted right there. Feels pretty good, looks pretty good. And of course, there we are, ready for our cabinets. So, honestly, the type of things that's going to affect you when you try to figure out, can I get it done in 3? Am I good enough? Can I sneak by with 2? Will I take 4? That's all going to be on you, depending on certain things. Like in this case, I didn't take that feather out wide enough on that second batch, that second feather. I didn't get it quite far enough out, or maybe that was the third. And even when I got it where I wanted it, the top was just a little bit falling off a little too sharp, and I just took it up just a little bit more. Could have stopped. Refrigerator's going to hide it. Nobody would know. If I didn't do a video on it, nobody would know, but I would know, and so I fixed that. And again, I think I mentioned when I changed the 2 drain entries for the sink and for the RO system, opened that wall, did that one in 2, looked good, felt good, but you know, my old 62-year-old eyes aren't all that perfect. When I got her painted, didn't even see anything there, but when you get really close, when I was hanging that little shelf, that little drain thing, I noticed I got some pinholes in it. Could fix that if we needed to. Whole room needs to be painted. I think I'll put that one off till the room gets painted. I hope this helps some. I hope these things never give you trouble, and it kind of depends on the connector itself. Have had great luck with these with the little rubber washers in there, because as long as you can get it, the thread in there and home out, they're golden. But that refrigerator box, that little box where we take off of the ice maker, for whatever reason, it just felt like it was a little fat. In fact, this one, if I spin this plastic one around, it's not perfectly smooth. It's a little bit wiggledy on one side of that. Now, that's not the one I use. It's a brand new one. But the steel one, the stainless steel one, it's machined fairly well. It's fairly tight, and I know I can put enough force on this piece and that brass piece in where the valve hangs down. I can get that tight enough, and we did. So hopefully, in a year, we won't have any more surprises. Appreciate you watching. I hope this has some value to you. Don't feel pressured is what I'm saying. If you're going to do it yourself and you don't do thousands of feet of this, of patching and taping a month or whatever, you can't expect yourself to be quite as efficient as some of the guys you see on YouTube. Don't feel bad about it. Do it till you get it right. And if you have to keep going back, keep going back. Who's going to know if it took you 6 times to fix it the way you want it? Honestly. Okay, maybe don't set somebody else's unrealistic standard up for yours. The idea is to get it pretty good. And I at least meet or exceed the original construction standards on my sheetrock at my house. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next show, whatever we do. Thank you.